What's going on, guys? So it has been forever since the last time I posted a video. So I decided to try something new today. So I'm actually going to take my 2007 Aston Martin Vantage out for a drive. And I'm going to do a comparison between the good and the bad. I've owned this vehicle for about 2.5 years now. It's been a really good time. So let's take it out and have a good time. All right, guys. So I will say, one of the very first things I noticed when I first drove this car, when I was looking to purchase it, is basically I could just feel the weight of the car. I've had just different sports cars throughout the years, and you could just really feel just the weight of the car. And of course, it's not a light car. It's a little over 4,000 pounds, so definitely not a light sports car. It is a Grand Tourer, but you can definitely feel that driving the car. You can just feel the weight. It feels very planted. It feels very solid, but you can feel that it does have some weight to it. Over time, that does start kind of, I guess, dissipating a little bit. You kind of get accustomed to it, and you don't notice it quite as much. But that's one of the biggest things I remember noticing when I got in the car, is I just could feel its weight, and also the braking, and I attribute that to the weight of the car too, and just the braking. It takes a little longer. Again, it's just a larger vehicle. It's not super athletic, agile sports car, but it's kind of like in between, where I think Aston really wanted to, of course, make sure you have the luxury aspect and the amenities, while also still being sporty. So that's kind of two of the negative things I noticed right off the cuff when I first purchased the vehicle, or when I was first test driving it. That exhaust note, but I definitely will say probably the next thing that I really noticed about the car as I was driving it, especially I remember driving it on the interstate with higher RPMs, is the exhaust note. I don't know how many times people have asked me, hey, what type of exhaust do you have on your car? And I tell them, I'm like, well, it's factory. It's just the factory exhaust. So Aston did a phenomenal job in just designing and tuning this exhaust. It works very well with this engine, works very well with this car. But I'd say that's definitely one of the high points. It just sounds amazing, and it fits perfectly with just the experience of driving this car. I will say one of the biggest things that I really enjoy about this car, and it's kind of hard to quantify, you can't really measure it so much, but it's just the experience. It's just this intangible experience, at least when I drive the car, I feel that way. It just gives you a very enjoyable experience. It's not the fastest car by any stretch of the imagination that I have ever owned, but it's definitely gives you enough of everything that you can really enjoy it. And I mean, I find myself driving around my city in this car and having a big bright smile on my face. And sometimes I think that people are gonna see me and think that I'm loony, running around by myself, big smile plastered on my face. But it's just that enjoyable. Like, I really have a good time in this car. I'd say another aspect that is very enjoyable about this car is just the interior. I'd say the quality of the materials used are just very high. I had a BMW prior, and of course, not to knock on BMW, great cars, very fun car. Definitely my M4 was a lot more athletic than this car. comes to the materials, I remember I bought my M4, and I remember thinking the interior was cheap, and I was like, what's going on with this BMW interior? I was like, it's M4s are supposed to be top tier, but then I realized I thought it was cheap in comparison to this car. But I mean, it was decent interior, but it was really just because of this car's materials are so high grade that it's hard to kind of stand up to that with other vehicles. Now, I will say one of the downfalls about this car is that it is not the most athletic vehicle. Clearly, it has a decent power plant. Of course, it's a V8. Has right around 380 horsepower. But of course, with its girth, it still is not necessarily, you know, the fastest 0 to 60 car, but still it has sufficient power. It gets you around, but it's just not the most athletic car all around. It's not, of course, it's not really made to be just a hardcore sports car. It's more of a grand tourer. But I feel like it does really well at that. It really does, in my opinion. It provides an experience, like an actual abnormally good experience, you know, versus just driving, you know, an everyday sports car. Especially right now, what these cars are going for, I think it's phenomenal value. I'd say it's pretty much, it's for certain one of the cheapest exotics that you can buy nowadays, and I'd say it definitely provides an exotic experience. It certainly feels different than any of the other cars I've owned before, but all around it's a really good time. I remember when I first got the car, and people were asking me about it, and probably about the best way I would describe the experience of the car was, it's like driving a lazy boy with a V8. So you have that luxury, and it really does. It has like a plush luxury type of feeling and, I guess, vibe to the car. But then, of course, on the other end of things, you have that roaring V8, that beautiful exhaust note to really tie everything together. And to me, that's really what provides just a very unique, enjoyable experience, is the fact that you have the luxury aspects of it. You have this elegantly designed vehicle, but you also have the brawn of the power and the sound, and just how all of those things hit your senses and just really provide a notable, enjoyable experience. I think it's hard to beat at this price point. So let's talk about the transmission. So it is a 6-speed single clutch transmission. It's an automatic. It's what Aston calls their sport shift transmission. It's definitely not the quickest. It's a little laggy. You're not going to be winning any drag races or breaking any lap records with it, which is not the purpose of the car anyhow. But it's fine. It gets the job done, but it's definitely one of the drawbacks of the car when you're driving it. They just bottled up joy and good feelings and used it to make this car. It's a fun time, and it's definitely a fun time on a budget. So I 1000% would recommend a Vantage to anyone that is looking to get into an entry-level exotic, car. It's just much more affordable, and got some emergency vehicles there. But for anyone that's looking to get into just an entry-level exotic that's not going to break the bank, honestly, for the 2.5 years or so that I've owned the car, it really has not given me too many problems. I've done a couple oil changes. I have had some mechanical work done, and that work, I will say, although it wasn't cheap, but considering it wasn't too bad cost-wise. But honestly, with the repairs, it was more so just the fact of the part availability, just the difficulty in getting parts, being that some of these parts have to be sourced from across seas. That can lead to, of course, some pretty long delays. So that was probably the worst thing, honestly, about the repair that I had to have done. Had to have a couple things replaced on it. But overall, I mean, honestly, at one point in time, this was actually my only vehicle. So this was just my daily driver, and it did just fine. It's comfortable. You know, it got me where I needed to go without giving me a hassle. So I'd say it's a pretty solid choice if someone's just looking to jump up to the next caliber of car. And right now, I mean, these Astons, I'd say they've taken a lot of depreciation already. The depreciation curve is pretty low, so you can really get in at a spot to where you can get a really great deal on one of these cars. And you can also, of course, that's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. That right there, I'd say, is enough reason to buy a Vantage. That right there, just that feeling, and it's stock. That's just how the exhaust is factory. It's phenomenal. They did a great job with it. I absolutely love it.
Check this out. Check this out. Check this out.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video of the ride along in the Vantage. I might do a more technical video in the future, but I kind of just wanted to do a positive versus negative type video on the car and my experience that I've had with it so far in ownership. So hopefully if any of you all are planning on getting a car like that in the future, it'll help you out, give you some more insight. But if you have made it this far in the video, I definitely appreciate it. It ended up being a little longer than I planned on, so I appreciate you sticking it out. But I will see you next time.